Welcome back to the deep dive. This time,
Yeah.
we're going tactical. We're diving into Counter-Strike 2. We've got a ton of patch notes. Cover the last few months.
Wow.
I'm already impressed. Just the sheer volume of changes and improvements that the developers have implemented.
Yeah.
It's like they went through the game
Oh, yeah.
with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
Just tweaking and refining every little thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating. They didn't just focus on adding new content. They really dedicated themselves to enhancing the core gameplay, addressing everything from bugs to movement mechanics.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It's like they're setting the stage for something really special. Speaking of new things, let's talk about the armory. This seems like a major addition. New weapon collections. Sticker collections. Charms. I have to admit, the idea of attaching a little sausage person to my AK, it's kind of appealing.
The armory is essentially a new way to customize. So you buy an armory pass. It unlocks armory credits. You earn those by playing. Then you can use those credits to buy all sorts of goodies, weapon skins, and yes, those charms. It's a clever way to reward players and give them more control over their appearance.
So imagine you're in a clutch situation, facing down an opponent, and then you see this tiny sausage person dangling from their 80WP.
Yeah.
It's enough to make you second-guess yourself.
It really adds a new layer of personality to the game. Speaking of personality, let's talk about jumping. I know, it seems kind of mundane, but the patch notes are packed with changes to jump height consistency.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm curious, what's the big deal about consistent jumping?
So, in previous versions, your jump height could vary depending on where you were on the map.
Really?
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but it's true. This led to inconsistencies and even gave players advantages.
Hold on, are you telling me that my jump onto B site on Nuke might have been easier or harder, depending on which side of the map I started on?
Exactly. Imagine trying to pull off a complex jump in a competitive match, and your jump height is slightly off, throwing off your timing, landing you in the enemy's crosshairs.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem. So these changes create a level playing field, ensuring that jump height is consistent.
Precisely. And the implications are huge, especially for competitive play. Pro players used to exploit those inconsistent jump heights to gain advantages. Especially on maps like Nuke and Inferno, now they have to reevaluate their strategies.
It's like the developers are resetting the meta, forcing players to relearn the game. I bet the pro scene is going to be shaken up.
It will be fascinating to see how teams adjust. But even for casual players, these changes make a big difference. Now you can rely on muscle memory and timing to execute those jumps, knowing that your jump height will be the same every time.
Speaking of pixel perfect, the notes also mention a fix for that bug where jumping on a slope could make you slide. I always felt like that was messing with my movement.
It's those little details that impact the feel of a game. And it shows that the developers are paying attention to feedback, trying to create the smoothest experience possible.
Oh, and here's something I didn't expect. A new server variable called Blyvianiver_jump_precision_enable. What's the deal with that?
This is a cool feature. It allows server owners to disable the new jump mechanics if they want. This is useful for community servers that run custom game modes, like surf maps.
Ah, so it's all about giving server owners more control, allowing them to cater to different play styles. I like that.
Exactly. They're not just imposing a single standard. They're giving players the flexibility.
Right. Before we get too bogged down in jump mechanics, let's shift gears to network performance. The patch notes are full of mentions about improvements to network jitter and misdelivery measurement. And there's even talk of telemetry graphs.
I know those terms sound technical, but they're all about creating a smoother online experience. Network jitter is like lag spikes that make your game stutter, and misdelivery is when data packets get lost, leading to similar issues.
So it's like trying to play chess with someone who keeps teleporting their pieces.
That's a great analogy, and these updates are all about minimizing those teleportation moments. They're making sure that the data flow between your computer and the game server is as smooth as possible.
And what about those telemetry graphs? Are we all expected to become network engineers now?
Not at all. Think of them as a behind-the-scenes tool if you're experiencing connection issues. Those graphs can help you pinpoint the problem, but for most players, these updates will simply translate to a more seamless online experience. Fewer lag spikes, fewer frustrating moments, and more accurate shots.
Okay, that's a relief. I'd much rather focus on improving my aim.
Exactly. And speaking of performance, there are also some notes about general performance optimizations. These are often the unsung heroes of game updates, but they can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I saw something about performance optimizations in hierarchies of unchanged entities. What in the world does that even mean?
It's a bit technical, But essentially, they've made the game more efficient at handling objects in the game world that aren't moving or changing.
So it's like decluttering your computer's desktop.
Exactly. And that can translate to higher frame rates, especially in complex scenes.
And smoother gameplay for everyone. I'll
Exactly.
take it. They also mentioned stability improvements. I feel like that's a standard line in every patch update. But why are these so important?
Stability improvements are all about preventing crashes and bugs. That can ruin your game. They might not be as flashy as new features, but they're crucial for a smooth experience.
It's like the foundation of a house.
Exactly. And the developers are clearly dedicated to building a rock-solid foundation for Counter-Strike, too.
All right. Let's move on to something more tangible, something we can actually see. Map updates. The patch notes are overflowing with tweaks and fixes.
Yeah, it seems like no map has been left untouched. We've got Ancient, Anubis, Dust 2, Mirage, Nuke, Overpass, and the list goes on. The fixes range from tiny adjustments to those frustrating pixel peaks and collision issues.
Yeah, I noticed they reworked the collision. On the staircase to A main on Ancient. What was the problem there?
It sounds like they've addressed an issue where player movement on those stairs felt clunky. You know, those moments where you feel like you're getting snagged on invisible bumps.
Oh yeah, I've definitely experienced that. So this fix makes movement on those stairs smoother.
Exactly. Smoother navigation means more fluid gameplay, which is crucial in those fast-paced firefights. They've also removed a tree that was creating a distracting shadow. Have a sight.
Oh, hey, seriously, they removed a virtual tree because of a shadow.
It might seem like a minor detail, but those things can impact gameplay. That shadow could have been obscuring player visibility.
That's amazing. It really shows how much attention to detail the developers have. They're not just throwing in random changes. They're carefully considering how every element affects the gameplay. Speaking of attention to detail, let's talk about Dust 2. They fixed some clipping at B site. Can you explain what that means?
Clipping basically refers to when your player model intersects with the environment. It can be annoying, especially in the heat of battle. You're trying to make a quick escape, and suddenly you're stuck.
Oh yeah, I've definitely rage quit a few times because of clipping issues.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
But these fixes ensure that the map feels more polished and that players can move freely.
It's a smoother movement, fewer frustrating deaths, and more satisfying gameplay. I like it. On Mirage, they fixed some C4 stuck spots. Those can be real game changers.
Absolutely. Imagine you're in a clutch situation, you've outmaneuvered the enemy team, and you're about to plant the bomb. But then, disaster strikes. The C4 gets stuck, and your plan is ruined.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I can feel the frustration. These fixes eliminate those frustrating moments.
Exactly. And speaking of consistency, they've also addressed some issues on Nuke. They fix more C4 stuck spots, as well as some pixel peaks.
Can you explain what a pixel peak is?
It's a technique where players use tiny gaps in the environment to spot enemies without fully exposing themselves.
It sounds like a sneaky tactic,
Yeah.
but I can see how it could be frustrating.
It can definitely be frustrating, but it's also a skill. However, in some cases, these pixel peaks were exploiting unintentional gaps, giving players an unfair advantage.
Ah, so these fixes level the playing field.
Exactly. And they've also fixed some gaps in the geometry where items could get lost.
Oh yeah, those are the worst. You throw a grenade
Yeah.
and it just disappears.
These fixes ensure that items interact consistently, preventing those frustrating moments.
I'm starting to sense a theme here. Consistency, polish, fairness.
You're absolutely right. It seems like those are the guiding principles behind these map updates. They're refining the environments
Yeah?
to create a more balanced experience.
Oh, but before we move on, I wanted to mention that they added Italy to competitive matchmaking. What are your thoughts on that map?
Italy is a classic map known for its unique layout and verticality. It's always been a popular choice, and it'll be interesting to see how it shakes up the competitive scene.
It definitely adds some variety, which is always a good thing. I'm curious to see how pro teams adapt their strategies. We've covered a lot of ground here. Jump mechanics, network performance, map updates. It's clear that the developers are meticulously refining every aspect of the game.
Absolutely. And it's not just the big changes that are making a difference. It's those small tweaks and fixes that really elevate the gameplay experience.
Yeah, it's like they're taking care of all the little annoyances
Yeah.
that we might not even realize are bothering us
Mhm.
until they're gone.
Exactly. And it makes a huge difference.
Before we wrap things up for part 2, let's take a quick look at some of the miscellaneous fixes and improvements.
Yeah.
You know, those little things that might make you say, oh, so That's why that was happening.
I love those aha moments.
Exactly. For example, they fixed a bug where grenades were making headshot sounds.
That must have been confusing.
Talk about a letdown. And they fix a bug where grenades weren't bouncing off certain dynamic props. I didn't even realize that was a bug.
It's those little details that can really impact the flow of gameplay.
They also fixed a C4 diffusal bug.
Crucial. A bug with C4 diffusal could completely disrupt the flow of a round.
And they fixed a bug where teammate colors weren't being assigned correctly on official servers until everyone pressed accept to stop.
Imagine accidentally targeting your own teammate because their color was wrong. It highlights how even seemingly minor details can have significant impacts.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of the Counter-Strike 2 patch notes. And it's been eye-opening. Who knew there was so much to talk about with things like jump mechanics and network optimization?
It's been fascinating. We've seen how much attention to detail the developers have, refining everything. Not just the big stuff, but also those almost invisible things that contribute to the game.
Before we sign off, I want to touch on a couple more of those little things, like they fixed an issue where step sounds would play for the local player, but not for other players, and vice versa.
That's a sneaky one. Footstep audio is so crucial in Counter-Strike. It's how you track enemy movement. This fix ensures that everyone's footsteps are heard, creating a fairer playing field.
And here's one that made me laugh. They fixed an issue where ragdoll water splash sounds would play on alive players, so no more phantom splashes.
It's all about immersion.
And lastly, they tackled some voice chat issues, including one where voice chat wouldn't work on community servers.
Voice chat is so important. It's how you strategize and coordinate. These fixes ensure that communication is clear.
So, we've gone through these patch notes, and the developers are dedicated to creating the best Counter-Strike experience possible. What do you think is the overarching theme of all these updates?
It's all about responsiveness and consistency. The developers are focused on creating an environment where skill reigns supreme, where every input you make translates directly onto the screen without any lag or glitches.
I agree. It's like they're saying, we want you to focus on outsmarting your opponents, not battling the game itself.
Exactly.
What are you most excited about going forward?
I'm curious to see how they evolve the armory system. There's a lot of potential there to introduce more creative cosmetics.
I'm with you on that one. And I'm eager to see how these updates shape the competitive scene. I think we're going to see some major shifts as players adapt.
It's going to be an exciting time for Counter-Strike.
Well, that's a wrap for our deep dive into the Counter-Strike 2 patch notes. Thanks for joining us. What are you most excited about? Let us know. And until next time,